What up, Wizards? It's Dev and the boys, and it's a big day, y'all. Foundations previews finally started this afternoon at MagicCon Las Vegas, and when I say a big day, I mean a big freaking day, dude. This is more individual cards than I've ever had to cover in a single preview video. 56 to be exact, but that's because this is a core set, and half of these are going to be reprints, more than half actually, and they can say it's not a core set, but I knows one when I sees one. But with that many cards, excuse me, Igby's tail, with that many cards, I really can't afford to waste like a second of either mine or your time anymore, so let's go ahead and get to it. Starting with the reprints, good news for me here is that I won't have to read half of these to you because they're all cards that if you've been playing Magic for nearly any length of time, you've probably heard of. Things like Disenchanter in this set, along with Duress, that's back for the next 5 years. Negate is in this set. That's good news, I guess. Giant Growth is here. That's pretty cool, even though a couple of these cards are already in Standard. What I like about this is that it gives them the chance to open up slots in other sets, you know? If this set's going to be in Standard for 5 years, which it is, at least is the language they've used. That means that hopefully you don't feel the need to reprint Negate or Disenchant or Duress or whatever in any other sets moving forward for the next few years. And if you do, I'm going to be slightly upset. Like, come on, why do we have Foundations if we're doing this? But anyway, again, yeah, a lot of these cards are going to be pretty easily identifiable if you've been on the scene for a minute, and these aren't the only ones. Like, for instance, Pirate's Cutlass is in the set. You know what that does, right? It's an equipment that cares about pirates. But I don't care about it. Now, there are recognizable things in this set like Sarah Angel, Shivan Dragon. They're coming back. You know, Mark Rosewater said the 5 iconic creatures are coming back. I guess this accounts for 2 of them. But we also saw Jugs. Big boy Juggernaut over here. It's used to, all these like last 3 creatures used to be like super feared dudes back when I started playing Magic. Now they don't matter. They're all like uncommons and stuff, but it's going to make the draft environment pretty fun. Did I say fun? I meant nostalgic. What's the difference? Soul Guide Lantern also got reprinted, and that card's actually good. That's actually pretty good. You know, you can just exile their graveyard and draw some cards or whatever. It's super cheap to cast. That's a very good Magic card. Might be better than Ghost Vacuum. I guess we'll find out. But there's also stuff like Arcane Epiphany, which cares about wizards. It draws you 3 cards at instant speed for 5 mana. But if you have a wizard, it costs 4 mana. It's actually kind of good when you think about it. There's a Kargan Dragon Rider over here, which cares about dragons. There's a few cards that they reprinted today that care about creature types. Like we also saw Elvish Archdruid, which is actually very, very cool to see. I wanted more elf support. We got some. Also super exciting here, Cloudblazer is back. Cloudblazer. If you want to blink a guy, he's pretty good. Draw you some cards, gain you some life. I'm trying to remember what Cloudblazer does. Pretty sure I got it right. But either way, there's actual recognizable cards in here still. Things like Hero's Downfall, a semi-staple, along with Think Twice. Deduce might be better than Think Twice, but think twice about that. You never know. And then Unsummon, which I probably should have put at the beginning of the video with all the super recognizable stuff, but I actually am trying to go in like order of some relevance here, and I think that Unsummon is surprisingly very, very good. I think Into the Flood Maw is just like better than this, right? But Unsummon is still like surprisingly strong effect. Stromkirk Bloodthief is also here for some reason. Who knows? A little vampire support, I guess. Doesn't it put the card into Pioneer? Why not? I guess there's a vampire deck in that format. This is just a 3-mana dude that puts a +1/+1 counter on a vampire you control during your end step if an opponent lost life that turn. Why doesn't it put a counter on all your vampires? One of the great mysteries of our time, but card's pretty bad. Probably should have put it with all the other creature type matters stuff a couple of entries ago. Mystical Teachings, by the way, is in this set. That's actually a very good card. It'd be really, really playable in a sort of Dimir control deck, especially like the combo-y versions of that deck that want to get like Jason Doomsday Spectre assembled, or maybe other things you can do. You know, actually things Mystical Teachings is very sweet to have in Standard. I've kind of wanted it back, so I'm glad we got it. But Gigantosaurus is also here to go on the complete opposite end of the spectrum in terms of what kind of decks you're going to put these 2 cards in. Mystical Teachings is over here. Gigantosaurus is way over there. So yeah, 5 mana, 10/10. I know it doesn't have any text on it right here, but it doesn't need text because it doesn't do anything other than be a 5-mana 10/10, which is exciting to a lot of people. We also got a bunch of color hosers. I'm going to have to read some of these. We got Flash Freeze, which is all right, I guess. That's a fine one. Some of these are good and some of these are bad, and Flash Freeze is all right. Devout Decree, on the other hand, is quite very good. Death Spark is also a card we have access to now, and it is also very good. So, like, the last 3 color hosers are great, but Green got Mold Adder. Okay. So that's okay. Green got Mold Adder, I guess, if you're going to put that in the sideboard of your Stompy deck. I don't know what you're doing, but red got a card I had only seen like once. It got like Mind Sparker from M13 or 14. It's like the only time this card's ever been printed, and it's pretty bad. It's not good. Like a 3-mana 3/2 first strike. Cares about like white or blue things happening. I think red and green kind of got the short end of the stick on this one. I don't know. Maybe Mold Adder is amazing. We also got Harmless Offering, as well as Demonic Pact. Let me make some room for these guys over here. Mark Rosewater teased that we're going to get a 2-card combo, both monocolored cards, both in different colors, that wins the game. So this is that. This is Harmless Offering, Demonic Pact. In case you've never seen this before, Harmless Offering is just donate. You just give a card to your opponent. And then Demonic Pact has a lose the game mode. So you do the 3 modes that the 3 modes that it lets you do that are all good. You know, hit that guy and you have to discard some cards or whatever. And then the last mode, you lose the game. What you do is you just Harmless Offering the Demonic Pact to your opponent, and they lose when you say go. It's actually pretty scary to have this in Standard, but it's also not that good when you think about it, so I'm not like super scared of it. We also got Ball Lightning. This was in my top 10 reprints that I want video, along with I think a couple other cards today. So I'm a happy guy, but still, yeah, Ball Lightning's back. I don't know if this is actually good in Standard or not, like in the current mono red builds. You know, it's mostly like load up a guy with pump spells, and I'm not really sure how much a turn 3 spend all your mana guy. I don't know if it's good in that deck, but I guess we'll see, man. Ball Lightning is a pretty scary man. Phyrexian Arena is also here. Those cards have nothing to do with each other. They both cost 3 mana, but yeah, Phyrexian Arena was already in Standard, but now we get this cool enchantment frame treatment with the bubbles. I always think of them as bubbles, but we also got a Johnny's Pride Mate. So that's like 12 different a thing happens when you gain life 2-mana creatures. Like, what is it? Essence Channeler as well as Amalia. And now this. So if you play like 2 Amalia, you can play like 10 2-drops that care about life gain. I don't know. It could work out for you. Seems all right. Also, temples are in this set. This is a weird part of this video. Just like machine gunning through all the reprints. But there's a ton of them. Temples are back. All 10 temples, in case you care. Now we have Surveil lands, as well as Scry lands, and I think we just would rather play the Surveil ones. I don't know how much play these are actually going to see. I'll find out. Halana and Elena's here too? Okay. I'm glad my tongue can still do that after like a year of not saying the name of the card. Halana and Elena. Halana and Elena. It's hard to do multiple times. But yeah, this sweet little duo here, man. It's good for Gruul decks, but again, the way Gruul decks are built right now, it's like slick shots and bump spells, so I'm just not convinced, but this is always a good card to have access to. There's also Hidetsugu's Second Right. You know what that does, right? It's only been printed once in like one of the Kamigawa sets. But yeah, this is 4 mana. If an opponent's at 10 life, they take 10 damage. Come on, it's hilarious. I really want to try to make this work in Standard, but I think it's probably a really bad idea. I assume this card's terrible, but I guess we'll all find out together on stream, won't we? Pyromancer's Goggles. Now we're getting into some good stuff. Pyromancer's Goggles. Give you some ramp and some extra spells and stuff. That's a sweet card to have for Big Red. Can we make Big Red? Can we finally do it? Lyra Dawnbringer's in this set. I'm just looking at 5 mana stuff now, I guess. I don't know. Again, these cards have nothing to do with each other, but I'm trying to... I think I'd rather play Pyromancer's Goggles than Lyra Dawnbringer. So can we go back and reorder these things? Lyra Dawnbringer's still going to be a really, really sweet option to have both in sideboards and even like occasionally in main decks, you know? I guess if you're building Angels, you play Lyra Dawnbringer. It's a good card. I promise you it's a good card. There's also Solemn Simulacrum, which is the card that I think a lot of us guessed would be the reprint from the Invitational series that Mark Rosewater teased. He said it wouldn't be the good one, so it's like, does he mean Bob or Snapcaster? It turns out he just means both. It's going to be Solemn Simulacrum, which is going to be safe to have in Standard, but also good to have in Standard. This is a more than fine Magic card. If you're reading it for the first time, you just started playing Magic, and you're like, well, that doesn't seem too good. No, it doesn't, does it? It doesn't seem good, but turns out it's actually insane. Gilded Lotus is here. I guess that's fine, right? We'll take that. Yeah, we'll take that all day. The big mana. Big mana is always good. Speaking of big mana, here's a big man. Darksteel Colossus. Darksteel Colossus. What are they doing? I don't know if this sees much play. I really don't know how much play this ends up seeing in Standard, but obviously there's some tricks you can play to get this thing out in Standard, man. And we actually saw something. We saw like 3 cards from Ether Drift today. The next set, the racing one that's coming out, the Fast and Furious set. that's coming out after this one. And one of them allows you to get this thing pretty easily, but yeah, still, Blightsteel. Darksteel, Colossus. In standard. Darksteel Colossus. You can tell we're getting to the really good stuff and kind of the end of things. We're on kind of a trip of colorless cards now, right? Sim, Gilded Lotus, Darksteel Colossus. So why not Sorcerer's Spyglass too? Sweet little sideboard card. Always has been, always will be. Let's take that thing. And then the last like 3 big reprints of the day were, first of all, Maelstrom Pulse. Huh? So this goes like directly into Golgari, I assume, is like a 1 or a 2 of in those mid-range piles in standard. That's because even at sorcery speed, again, like blowing up any non-land permanent is just gross. So having access to that in your green-black deck is good. Let's play it. Also, Time Stop. Time Stop's back. Time Stop is back. This costs 6 mana to just end the turn, which effectively counters any spells that happen to be on the stack. You don't take any combat damage, obviously. So sometimes you just cast it on your opponent's upkeep, or you wait till they cast a spell and then say no, and it's just absolutely grotesque what this card I'm actually not sure this is 100% safe. I'm really not, man. Time Stop is a very annoying card to have to play against, and that hasn't changed since M10. I think this was printed in the one with the X. I'm fairly certain that's the last time we saw this, but super aggravating card, and to have it in current day standard, I think it'll actually be kind of playable. But the biggest reprint of the day is Progenitus, because have you seen him? He's huge. He's big. This costs 10 mana. Wooburg twice for a 10/10 with pro everything. But I guess the catch is that if he goes into your graveyard from anywhere, he gets shuffled back into your library like an Eldrazi man might do. So that means you can't really reanimate him. But what you can do right now is Smugglers surprise him into play like fairly easily. There's a few other ways to cheat this guy onto the battlefield in standard right now. Like Hauntwood Shrieker, right? Like you manifest Dread and get him like face down, and then Hauntwood Shrieker just turns him face up, and that's pretty funny. But, you know, again, there's ways to get this dude out right now in standard, and I think surprise is probably the funniest and best way to do it. So, I don't know. You definitely could see some play. I imagine an out-of-nowhere 10/10 pro everything is probably going to ruin some days. So, we'll see about Progenitus, man. But that's all the reprints in a speed run. I don't know how well we did time-wise, but there are new cards to talk about today, and I want to get to them. There was only one, like, bad common from the new stuff today, and it's Crypt Feast. This is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 3/4 guy. He's a zombie. He's also got Menace, and whenever he attacks, if you have Threshold, he gets +2/+0. So I guess you're paying 4 mana for a potential 5-power Menace guy. Not the worst thing ever in draft, but I think the important thing about this dude is that he is the first of these sort of like beloved returning mechanics that we got to see today. Who knows how many different cards all these returning like deciduous mechanics are going to be featured on, but we got to see a few of them today, and a lot of them are like way more exciting than this. But there was one more common that we got to look at from today that was brand new, and I think this one is actually very good, and you may refute that, but I'm pretty sure this card's fine. You know, this is just 3 mana for a cancel, right? 1 and 2 blue, counter target spell, and then you get to draw and discard. Fantastic. I'm pretty sure that's great. You know what else I liked today was the abundance of very core setty cards that we got in the rare slot. Most of the other cards we're going to look at today are all like rares and mythics and such. Maybe a couple of uncommons here and there, but still a lot of really powerful things to look at theoretically. Again, this is just this screams core set to me, some of the rares that we got to look at today. And I love that, to be honest. You know, again, these cards are just like the last one, very simple effects that, even though they're simple, doesn't mean they're not powerful, but they're gated a little bit by their casting costs. And again, that's extremely core set to me, but it doesn't make me like these cards any less. So that in mind, let's take a look at Twinflame Tyrant as well as Archmage of Runes here. Now, Twinflame Tyrant is 5 mana, 3 and 2 red for a 3/5 dragon with flying. Let's go. It's a dragon. If a source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage instead. Okay, so super simple, again, very easy to understand what this card does, but that does not take away from its power. This is a super powerful line of text that has relevance the turn this hits the board, right? You know, and it's not just if they hit your opponent, it's if they deal damage to their planeswalkers or their creatures in combat too, so that's great. And even though this looks small, it's effectively a 6-power creature once it gets attacking or blocking, so great dude here, man. I think there's probably better ways to spend 5 mana in standard, right? Bone Horde Dracosaur comes to mind, and Terror of the Peaks, and blah blah, but still, I think this is a neat dude that, unlike the last couple of cards I just talked about, and other stuff like it, Dragonhawk, right? These are all 5-mana dragons, but they don't do a whole heck of a lot the turn they hit the table, and this guy has the potential to. That said, I do think his casting cost is like a little bit too high to really fit anywhere in Standard, but we'll see if he's part of a combo finish or something. But likewise, Archmage's Runes, his 5-mana casting cost is probably a bit too high to see play much of anywhere, but once he's on the table, he's got powerful effects, man. 3 and 2 blue for a 3/6 giant wizard. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. Those are both like really good lines, man. You know, we see things for 2 mana, like Goblin Electromancer or whatever, that even the card in Standard, there's a red-blue otter right now that has that first line of text in Standard. So Haughty Jin is a 3-mana guy that has this line of text in Standard. So it's not unheard of to see this for way, way cheaper. And even though I like the line of text, I feel like I should at least point that out. But there's also this other line of text that you very rarely see and is actually broken if you get to untap with this guy on the table. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, draw a card, is actually kind of loaded, but again, 5 mana kind of really gates this dude out of Standard play, I think, but hopefully I'm wrong. I could imagine that it's something that like doppelgangs this guy or copies him multiple times, and now every time you cast an Into the Flood Maul, you draw 2 or 3 cards. Like, it could get out of hand pretty easily, but I'm just not like super sure about him. Let's keep going with some not super powerful, but at least fun stuff that we got to see today, like Zul Ashur, Lich Lord, and Arabo the First Fang, which you already know I really like. But let's look at Zul Ashur first. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 2/2 legendary zombie warlock with ward, pay 2 life. You can tap Zul, and then you can cast target zombie creature card from your graveyard this turn. Let's go. Got some zombie support in here. This is a kind of sweet commander when you think about it, because it's so cheap to cast. I really like a cheap commander, you know, because after the second and third time you're casting them, they're still relatively easy to get on the table. That's pretty good, especially if you can give her haste in some way, right, and still have some mana left over to cast the zombie. You've been doing some really fun stuff with this, man. We don't have all the best zombies in Standard in the world right now, but we do have some we can recast from our yard, and I imagine this set will give us a few more. So cool little card for just a couple of mana here, but does require some setup, and they see it from a mile away. But I guess the good news is if they want to deal with it, they usually have to pay some life, and I'm into that. So not a terrible magic card here, but we'll look at Arabo the First Fang. Am I doing that right? Arabo the First Fang over here. This is 3 mana. Why is he blue? 2 and a white for a 2/2 legendary cat avatar. Other cats you control get +1/+1. I love it. Whenever Arabo or another non-token cat you control enters, create a 1/1 white cat creature token. So this actually gives you 4 power when it comes into play. And then imagine things like, I don't know, Leonin War Leader on the next turn or something, like the dude that creates 2 cats when he enters or attacks. And then you get a 3rd cat off that interaction and like a 1,000,000,000 power toughness, or it's like 9 power toughness in that particular situation. But yeah, you know, you can like double spell and play 2 cats the turn after you play this, and you're just flooding the board with 2/2 cats or whatever. I don't know, man. I really like this. I think it's a fun cat commander, and I'm always kind of looking for those. We kind of don't have enough of them, but even outside of commander, dude, I'm going to try to make it work in Standard, where I don't think like Cats Matter is going to be a deck, but like I'm sort of obligated to do it. I'm going to have fun doing it. Also, one more thing, pretty cute, curved into a roaming throne, right? Because you get a couple of cats from that, and then, you know, you play more cats and you get 2 cats for each cat. It's fun. Don't let that happen in your house, though. It's known to happen in your house sometimes. Don't let it happen. But anyway, what's next? This card's fine, but we also got to look at Mizit Visionary here. Sick card, but again, a little bit corsetty, and that can be fun to you. You can like that, or you can not like that. And you can be like, oh, they did my boy Mizit dirty, but like, I actually think this is a fun card. And that's all you can really ask for at the end of the day. This is 6 mana for a red and a blue for a 5/5. Legendary flying dragon wizard. So, you know, 5/5 flying dragon's always fun, but you have no maximum hand size. Whenever a source you control deals combat damage to an opponent, you draw that many cards. So actually pretty sick, man. Non-combat damage is somewhat hard to come across, but what I do like about this is that it goes in like other Niv Mizzet decks, you know, like the one that does damage to your opponent for each card that you draw. And then if you have this guy down, I'm pretty sure you just win the game, right? Is that right? Because there's another Niv Mizzet that whenever you draw a card, hit him for a damage, and then you would just win. It would loop, right? So yeah, that's a fun thing to do in Commander, I guess. But in Standard, this is 6 mana, man. I kind of said I wanted like Library of Ling or Reliquary Tower or some effect like this first line of text, but not if it costs 6 mana and just gets blown away by like every removal spell, you know what I'm saying? So I think this is a little bit expensive, to be honest, but again, does not mean I'm not going to be banging it out on the stream. This set is going to be full of tons of like simple, somewhat powerful, but probably overcosted cards just like this and those other cards we looked at a minute ago that I can, you can clock is probably a little bit too expensive for Standard, but I'm nonetheless excited to play. And honestly, those are my favorite sets. So I'm already kind of pleased. Niv Mizzet is cool. And now that I really look at him, I keep thinking like, this guy actually has a lot of infinite combos, doesn't he? But let's move on to the last sort of fun-ish card of the day before we move on to what I've got labeled as good cards. This one is right on the cusp, man. I do think this one is Standard playable, depending on what other Goblin support we get. Seer Slicer Goblin is a 2-mana rare here. 1 and a red for a 2/1 Goblin Warrior. It has Raid at the beginning of your end step. If you attacked this turn, create a 1/1 red Goblin creature token. So that is okay. Although not amazing. Just throw that out there. I don't think this is like incredible or anything, but Mono Red wants to attack. Period. So you are most likely going to be attacking most turns, including turn 2 when you play this, right? You played a 1-drop? You're probably attacking on turn 2, especially if you went first. So this should put 2 dudes on the table fairly easy on turn 2, and that is actually incredible. Especially if you like throw a squee down on the next turn, swing in, you get a token again at the end of the turn. It's like you're really filling the board quickly in your Goblins deck, and obviously just like any Anthem effect makes them huge. So I don't know, dude. I think this might actually be pretty playable, but we got to get the rest of the pieces in place for Goblins if we're going to play it. But if we're going to end the fun stuff with a kind of cuspy card, I guess I'll start the good stuff with another one that's kind of like, are you sure this is good? But let's take a look at Bloodthirsty Conqueror because I can't wait to play this guy, man. 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a 5/5 Vampire Knight with flying and death touch. And it's a very important line of text. Whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. Okay. So it's an Exquisite Blood or whatever. Which is nuts because we have a Sanguine Bond in Standard, right? We have Enduring whatever it is, the black Enduring card from the last set. And is that not just the combo? Is that not the combo? Whenever you gain life, opponent loses that much life. And then whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. And then Enduring whatever his name is will give you... They'll keep looping. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's an on-curve, somewhat difficult to interact with combo in Standard that wins the game. And if you're in a black-white life gain deck or something, it's first of all easy to get to turn 4 and 5 because you're gaining life, right? Like you probably won't lose to aggro if you gain enough life and remove a dude or two, but really sick to have another Exquisite Blood type effect because that card is kind of freaking expensive and I'm tired of it. So even though this dude's mythic and will probably be a little expensive too, it's just always nice to have a little more redundancy with effects like that in Commander, but having it in Standard at all available to us is super, super exciting. Now, a card that might be like a little bit better than it appears at first glance is Mossborn Hydra over here. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 0/0 elemental Hydra. It's got Trample, and it enters with 1/1/1/1 counter on it. But it has a landfall. I'm really hoping we see more landfall stuff in this set, but if this is it, that's fine with me. I think it's still got a chance, man. Whenever a land you control enters, double the number of +1/+1 counters on this guy. So on turn 4, if I play this, haven't played my land yet, throw down a Fabled Passage. So what is it, a 3/3 now? Because it doubles the number of counters, it gets 2 counters. So it's a 3/3. If I pop the Fabled Passage, get another land, it's a 6/6 trample, right? And then like if I play a land next turn before I attack, it's a 12/12. Like, it probably gets out of hand like pretty fast. And we've already got landfall-ish decks in Standard with like Iridescent Vine Lasher. But, we've got Lumra and Aftermath Analyst. So this guy could easily go in those decks because Lumra may not win the game the turn he comes into play, especially if you don't have a Vine Lasher. Same thing with Analyst. You know, if you don't have a Vine Lasher, it probably won't win the game when you use its ability. But with mossborn Hydra, it has Trample, right? So if you Lumra and get like 6 lands back from the graveyard, this will get big enough to just win the game all in one chomp. So, like, almost no matter what your opponent's life total is at that point. I don't want to do the math on it, but it's going to be like close to triple digits, if not above triple. Yeah, it probably will be, actually. Do I want to sit here and do the math? Nah, feels like a waste of time. Arena will do it for us. Still, man, you get the point here, man. If a bunch of lands come into play, and honestly, even if those lands are just like fetch land, something like that, you know, if you explosive vegetation, or I guess in standard it would be like invasion of Zendikar, and you get 2 lands in play at the same time, like you're doing that's a ton of counters right there, Bubba. If you're putting counters on it in other ways, like if your turn 2 is Bristly Bill into this, and then Bristly Bill starts putting counters on it, and you get double landfall triggers. There's a green-black landfall deck in standard where we can curve 1, 2, and 3. It's really taking shape, dude. But yeah, I mean, you see what I'm saying. There's so many ways to think things that go with this card in standard. I think we might actually be looking at a deck here, dude. Card's good. But hey, you want to see some Planeswalkers? We got a couple of those today. We saw the other 2 from this set, and they're actually pretty good. I would show my face during these, but I feel like the Planeswalkers need to take up the entire screen or else you can't read them. So with that in mind, let's start with Kaito, Cunning Infiltrator. This is 1 and 2 blue for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a loyalty counter on Kaito. Wow. +1 Kaito. Up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card, then discard a card. So that works with his passive, right? The guy gets through, gets a loyalty counter, so it's kind of a +2 in some ways. But his -2 is to create a 2/1 blue ninja creature token. And for -9, you get an emblem with whenever a player casts a spell, you create a 2/1 blue ninja creature token. That is a pretty sick ultimate right there, but obviously, we try to evaluate Planeswalkers for the first couple of abilities, and his first couple of abilities are kind of good, man. The passive is especially sick here, because sometimes he'll be able to +1 and then get like multiple, you know, loyalty counters in turn. Like he gets the +1 for doing that, he gets a +1 for the unblockable dude getting through, and then he might get another couple of loyalty counters for more dudes getting through if you just have a bunch of like flying or unblockable guys. So right now in standard, there's like Silent Hall Creeper and Surge Engine and a couple of other unblockable dudes. Mockingbird works well with this, Siren Spy or whatever, Spyglass Siren. So there's a ton of things, and all of that on top of like Enduring Curiosity in the 4-drop slot, drawing you cards when dudes get through for combat damage. Again, like, we're cooking, you know, the burner's on, water's boiling at this point. So I don't know, card's actually pretty slick, and also kind of drops into the blue-black mid-range deck that's currently available in standard, and actually a pretty good deck. You know, it's a very self-contained Planeswalker that makes creatures, gets loyalty counters pretty easily, and doesn't protect itself super well, I should point out, but it's still all around decent, especially considering 3 mana is a relatively low price tag. But I promised you 2 Planeswalkers, didn't I? We got to look at Chara Chandra up here, his Flame Shaper. Chandra, Flame Shaper. This is 7 mana, 5 and 2 red for a 6 loyalty Planeswalker. That's a lot of mana, but that's a lot of loyalty, right? And you can +2 her the moment she comes into play to add 3 red mana and exile the top 3 cards of your library. Choose one of those cards. You may play that card this turn. All right. For +1, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it has haste, and at the beginning of the end step, sack this token. It also has -4. That's pretty good. Chandra deals 8 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. That mode appears to be very much worth it. 7 mana is so much, but again, ticking up to 8 the first turn she comes into play is pretty sick, and allowing you to get another spell. You know, if you exile like a lightning strike, or you already have one in your hand, it just gives you mana. And if you untap with the Chandra in play, an extra 3 mana on a plus is just nuts. She kind of draws you. You know, she casts Anticipate on a +2. Like, that's really, really good in a lot of ways. But, you know, the first +1 here is probably pretty usable when you can, you know, copy a Trumpeting Carnosaur or an Atali or a Terror of the Peaks and get that into the battlefield trigger. So a lot of fun stuff that the +1 can do, pretty obviously. But the -4 is kind of the best mode on the card pretty easily. You know, she comes down -4, she's still at 2, she blows up everything that could possibly contest her, and she also gives you a chance to get through for combat damage that turn if you got a couple of creatures. Kind of a one-sided wrath in some ways, and that's nasty. It can't hit face or anything, but it will kill just about any planeswalker it comes down into. And it can kill usually like 3 dudes pretty easily, and that is going to shore up the board state and stay in play. Again, you're blowing up all their dudes, but it doesn't do anything to your guys. So if you have a couple of dudes on the table, you throw down Chandra, you blow up most of their guys, you can usually block for her. And I'm pretty sure if you untap with a Chandra on the table, you got the game in your pocket, baby. Like, you're drawing cards, you're gaining mana. It doesn't take her too long to get back to, wrath mode. Just one more turn and she's back into wrath mode. So good luck rebuilding after Chandra -4s. This card is absolutely nuts. And despite the relatively high mana cost, I think it's probably playable in standard. We see plenty of 7 drops that are playable in standard. I think this is definitely one of them. Not quite a Kaya in terms of 7 mana planeswalkers, but this is the big red card that it's been waiting for years. So if this doesn't make big red a deck, I hesitate to say nothing will, but good lord, man. Not only big red, but multiple mid-range decks are probably drooling over this thing right now for multiple reasons. She's a pretty lady. But now down to my favorite new cards of the day. There's 3 left. At time of recording, at least. Maybe I'll reload Mythic Spoiler. Maybe I won't, because 56 cards is enough. But Tinybones, Bobble Burglar. I keep wanting to say Burger. Bobble Burger is up next. Tinybones, Bob's Burgers is 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 1/3 legendary skeleton rogue. Whenever an opponent discards a card, it's going to be sick, exile it from their graveyard with a stash counter on it. During your turn, you may play cards you don't own with stash counters on them from exile, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them spells. For 3, a black and a tap, each opponent discards a card at sorcery speed. Okay, man, I keep thinking that discard needs like one more thing, like we've got Bandit's Talent, and we've got Acquisats, and we've got Duress, and some good 1 mana counter spells, discard spells in standard. We've got Cruel Claw's Heist, we've got Liliana of the Veil. Like, it seems like we should be able to make discard work, and it's just always a half step behind right now. So it turns out, I think that maybe this is what we're waiting for. It's a 2-drop that, unlike the 1-drop Tinybones, which you can totally play in discard if you want to, I think it's very good. This punishes them even more. It doesn't have to get through for combat damage or anything like that. It just punishes them whenever they discard. And you can also come up against, reanimator decks now and not necessarily have to worry about just being their discard outlet, which is pretty awesome too. I like this way more than like the Raven Man, for instance, as far as like 2 mana discard enablers that actually do something in that deck. I think this has some life in standard ahead of it. And up next is Crystal Barricade, 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 0/4 wall with Defender. You have hexproof. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. It's only 2 mana. It's pretty gross. Like, it can't be go for the throated, it can't be bolted or torched or anything like that. Just actually requires 4 whole toughness to get through. It's a decent blocker in the early game. Your opponent obviously can't shock or lightning strike you, but they also can't, say, iridescent vine lasher you or hit you with a desert that does damage when it comes into play or anything anywhere along those lines. Just hexproof, you have hexproof is like way better than it looks. It protects. Weird that we just looked at Tinybones, because it actually protects pretty well from all of the, discard decks that you see in standard right now. You're not going to get hit by anything that makes you specifically targets you to discard a card. But we made it to the last card of the day, and it's probably not the best card of the day. I shouldn't go out on a limb and say that, but it is a pretty scary one. Here's Herold of Eternal Dawn. This over here is 7 mana, 4 and 3 white for a 6/6 flash flying angel with Platinum Angel's text. It basically says that you can't lose and your opponents can't win. The difference here is that this card has flash, which is, again, like, kind of terrifying, honestly. Now, of course, if you try to flash this in, I should just public service announcement, full disclaimer here, full disclosure. Here's a disclaimer. That's what I should have said. But yeah, if you flash this in on a turn when you like would die to combat damage or something, your opponent can just like get lost it or go for the throated if they have the mana and the card in their hand. So like, it does die to removal and then you lose the game, and like, that's totally a thing that could happen. Happens with Platinum Angel all the time. But still, still, I guess that's my whole argument is still, however, read the card, because that will explain the card. And in this case, when the explanation of the card is you can't lose and they can't win, Probably want to take note of that if nothing else. This is a neat reanimation target. I like that about it. We actually have a couple of reanimator spells in standard that can reanimate this at instant speed. So I think that's kind of cute. But you know, if it's just in your hand, having flash is also disgusting. I don't know, bro. Like, card looks dumb to me to exist. I thought, based on Mara's teaser, I thought we were going to get Platinum Angel, so I thought I was ready for a thing like this, but like, now that I actually see it in front of me, 7 mana or not, it still kind of makes my blood run cold. Especially like if you ever untap with the card in play, which should not be hard because it has flash. Just play it at the end of their turn, and then untap, and look at that, I can counter spells. I can cast 3 steps ahead and counter whatever your removal spell is, but also get a copy of the angel. Jeez Louise. I'm telling you, the card is a little bit horrifying to see in front of you in real life, I bet. So here she is, dude. Again, I'm not like sure that this is the most relevant or best card for standard of the day, but it's definitely one people are going to be trying out. Flash is kind of ridiculous to throw on a Platinum Angel. But that is Itsky Lewitsky. Made pretty good time on that one while still kind of talking about these cards as much as I wanted to. It's kind of surprising, but yeah, there's going to be previews basically all weekend from what I can tell on the Where to Find Previews page on Wizards website. So stick with us Saturday, Sunday. We're going to get a couple of previews. Stick with the 10 cards rated series that we do every day. If you're not watching that one yet, it's a hoot. Check it out. But stick with us especially Monday because it appears as though a ton of previews are going to come out then. And in the meantime, the between time, just let me know how you felt about like all of these cards down there. You know, what reprints are you most psyched about? What new cards are you most like trying to make work in your head already? You know, like that 3/6 giant that draws a card whenever you cast an instant or sorcery. I just want to doppelgang and get like 3 copies of that guy. And now every time I cast doppelgang, I end up drawing like 7 cards or whatever it is. Doppelgang some more copies of it and draw like 5 more cards, and there's all kinds of stuff I want to do with these things, but I'm not sure any of it is that powerful. But that said, we did see some really strong cards today that are almost certainly going to affect standard. So let me know how you felt about the whole package, the whole kit down there in the comments, and I think that's about it. Just do all the YouTube stuff on your way out. Good first day of preview season, everybody. There's a bunch more where that came from. Make sure you're subbed to the sandwich so you get those videos when they come out. If you like this video, then the next one's more likely to pop up in your recommended, and it'll be put in other people's recommended feeds. That is how I understand the function of the like button. It helps me out a lot. Just throw that, just one touch of the button that's shaped like a thumb will help me tremendously. But if you really wanted to super help, if you want to be a super helper, nice person, there's a link in the description to Patreon. If you consider supporting, just $1 a month is all I really ask of you. And that does so much to make sure I get to keep doing preview seasons and such. So again, if you consider doing that, thank you very much. And if you've been doing it for a while now, you're amazing. How are you you're the best person. Really, I couldn't do it without you. And I mean every word of that, but we are in preview season now, everybody, and this is a set that I have been terrified by and mystified by at the same time. I can't wait to see what's going to happen with this set, and it already looks fairly promising. But if you feel differently, let me know down there, and I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love, and be kind.